listening to, I say you are listening to, you are absolutely listening to the George Espinlove Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie!
Thank you. Oh, you're so kind. Excuse me. I can always tell when it's Friday because the applause is even greater than Thursday, and that is extreme in itself. I welcome you to the George Espinlove Show, and whether you're listening to this show down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, or around the world somewhere, we have two goals in mind. One is to put a smile on your face, even if it be for a few seconds. Sit back. Let the cares, the stress, and the worries just fall off of you for a while and get tuned in and listen to what's going to take place here tonight. Our other goal is to make you as crazy as the rest of us here on the Funny Farm. Now, if we can accomplish one of those goals, we'll be very happy. If we can accomplish both of those goals, oh my, we'll jump for glee. But nonetheless, as you entered the Funny Farm, make no doubt about it, many come, but few leave. We want you to have a great time with us tonight. Get up, move around, get loose, and then sit back down. I should have been a poet. My goodness gracious. Our guest tonight from California is going to discuss some very, very important things that we need to know. There's nothing new. It's just the same old stuff, but we need to apply it to our everyday life. Dean, are you there?
I am, absolutely.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight, and we always ask our guests, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Be happy to. Dean Gualco, I've worked in the public sector for about 20 years as a personnel director, human resource manager in municipalities. I've also have written 5 books. This is my 5th book. Most books are about business or about improving upon a person. This one is more political in nature. I have 4 advanced degrees. I have a doctorate in education from the University of the Pacific. I have a master's in public administration from University of Southern California, also an MBA, and, of course, a bachelor's degree in finance. I also own a consulting company called Torian Consulting, which really does quite a bit of my speaking and books and the promotions in that area. So a very diverse background, both in the private sector, and also in the public sector, so certainly have that knowledge. Understand education. I've taught education for 20 years at the college level as well as an adjunct professor. So understand that aspect, which for the most part is public, and then a small business owner with a consulting company. So this background, I think, gives me more of an appreciation and understanding of our economy, of our society, and of our political system. I think it's a very positive attribute if you want to write a book of this nature.
We've had guests on from all walks of life. Excuse me, lawyers, doctors, musicians, songwriters, actors, and it goes on and on and on. And I tell some of the folks, when they come with credentials like yours, I tell everybody, you have done more in one lifetime than I could possibly do in 6.
Well, credentials are great. But I always tell people it's what you do with them that's more important. That if you go to get a college degree and it goes on your wall, you really haven't done anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've obtained a position of responsibility and all you've done is obtained a position of responsibility, you haven't done anything with it. So my hope is that I've done something with some of these awards or accolades or achievements that I've had, that I've actually done something. And there's a difference between participating in society and contributing, and I hope I work towards at least being a contributor. So that's what I want to do, certainly with my time.
Well, I find that commendable. Excuse me. With the things, or with the morass that we find ourselves in today in our country, did this thing start behind the scenes a long time ago, and we didn't see it, or we didn't know it was behind us like a little Pac-Man eating away, or is it just something that popped up?
Well, I believe that it would be termed evolutionary rather than revolutionary. And what I mean by that is revolutionary is where you have a severe depression or you have a war, which absolutely changes society. And it was unforeseen. It couldn't be planned for as much as things can be planned for. I think we'll look back at what's happened over the last few years as evolutionary. I, in the book, went back to World War II. I certainly went back to the founding of the United States, but I find that really the genesis started after World War II. And the main reason is because after World War II, the United States was the dominant political and economic country in the world, far more than at present. We produced 40% of the world's goods and services. And to put that in perspective, we had 6% of the world's population, and we produced 40% of goods and services. There's no way that a country is producing anywhere near that amount today. When you produce almost half the goods and services in a world, not just a country, in a world, then you can dictate the terms of that economy. You can dictate the terms of exports, imports, prices, labor costs. And that's what we did. We were so dominant, and the other countries throughout the world were so decimated by the war. And we're talking about Japan and West Germany and England, Paris, France, Russia. These countries had decimated industries, couldn't produce manufacturing equipment, but the United States could. So they produced it and charged, for the most part, what they wanted to. And they were able to do that for almost 30 years. From after 1945 into the 1970s. And over those 30 years, these other countries like Japan and England and France were able to rebuild their economies, certainly with the help of the United States, with the Marshall Plan and some other aspects. And they were able to build a manufacturing base from the ground up, and by the 1970s, they were able to compete against the United States. Well, between the 1940s and the 1970s, the United States was able to grant historic concessions and benefits to a wide range of people, even people who didn't earn them or deserve them. They were great, in fact. It's great to get Social Security. It's great to get Medicare. It's great to get welfare. It's great to get unemployment insurance. I've said for quite a long time that these are great benefits to have, and who wouldn't want to have them? Who as a society wouldn't want to be able to provide those to people? Mm-hmm. But they have to be paid by somebody. Somebody has to pay them. And, of course, when we dictated and controlled the world's economy, we were able to provide these benefits because we were able to continually increase the price of our goods. And in some ways, our goods didn't have to be that good because there was just no competition for it. It was a great time to be an employee in a United States business. When you hear of people like my parents who have worked at a company for 30, 40 years, don't understand having 6 different careers that my generation had, but certainly they worked for a long time at a company and were able to accumulate these benefits over their tenure at their organizations. It was really a heady time. You couldn't ask for a better time, both from an employer and also from an employee perspective. It just wasn't destined to last. And by the mid-'70s, we foresaw that we weren't able to compete. We weren't able to compete because, quite simply, our costs were unmanageable. The price of our goods and services were higher than what these other countries were producing, as they had already rebuilt or were rebuilding their industries. That is, I think, one of the most critical aspects to understand when we look at what happened to the good job, what happened to corporate America, what happened to our ability to make a product in the United States and sell it throughout the world. It really is that 30, 40-year period where we moved away from being competitive in what we produce because too much of our monies were going to labor and also to benefits, and it made us unable to compete against other countries like China and India that didn't have Social Security or significant medical costs or unemployment or Medicare, those types of costs.
What? Excuse me. When did we start to go downhill?
Well, it was definitely after World War II. There's no doubt about that, and some people will look back to 1935 or the Great Depression, where it really was bordering on starvation, but certainly rampant insecurity during that period. And they started Social Security. Most people think that Social Security was a great program, but it was a program in 1935 that was developed where the average person would not receive the benefits of Social Security. People forget that the age of Social Security in 1935 was 65, but the average age that a person lived to in 1935 was 62. So it was a program that was created that the average person would not enjoy. If they indexed that for inflation, not inflation, but if they indexed that to what the average age of a person would be, the average life tenure would be somewhere around 78 for men and 82 for women, which means that if Social Security was the same today that it was in 1935, you wouldn't get Social Security until you're 78 for a male, somewhere around there, 82 for a female. Of course, most people find that incredible. But it was a program, it was a societal benefit program that was created for most people not to enjoy, but it was meant to give some stability, at least to some people. So it started there, and then you had FLSA, which Fair Labor Standards Act, that talked about overtime costs, and these are all laudable things. I tell people quite often, isn't it great that we have Social Security? Isn't it great that we have Medicare? But there's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, after the 1940s, you started to have additional benefits, which culminated in Medicare in the 1960s, which certainly has been a considerable albatross to the United States economy. The government pays about 50% of all health care. Medicare is certainly a big cost there. One of the most important statistics that I can relay is that in 1940s, the average business paid an additional 5%, somewhere around 5%, in employee benefit costs, which would also include unemployment and those aspects. Today, it's over 30%. So when you hire a person, the average business is going to pay an additional 30% over and above their salary, an additional 30% for these ancillary benefits, which now include Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment. Mm-hmm. And if you compete against countries like India, like Vietnam or Korea or some of these other countries that don't have these benefits, you can see how we are at a cost disadvantage in the economic realm of creating goods and services, because our goods and services are going to be higher priced than those that are produced in other countries. And it's no wonder that either jobs are going overseas to take advantage of lower labor and regulation costs, or there's been a rampant cut in employee wages, or even the cut in the number of employees. That is probably, in my opinion, the most significant statistic about why so many of the jobs today have either gone overseas or have gone away, is because it's become so difficult cost-wise to produce a product and service because of these ancillary costs.
Was Social Security ever meant to be permanent?
I believe so. I think that most research will tell us that it was a program that was intended to stay in perpetuity. What it wasn't intended to do, and if you go on the Social Security website today, it'll tell you that it is not the sole retirement income that the average person should rely upon. Mm-hmm. However, that's what it's become. Rather than individuals saving money, instead they're relying solely on Social Security, and that's the most destructive aspect of retirement today. 36% of retirees have saved nothing at all. 1/6 of retirees rely solely on Social Security. The average worker has saved under $100,000, and they need $250,000 just to have some sense of a standard of living. So part of my book, as you know, the title is Choices and Consequences, is about people who make choices throughout their life, and they must live with the repercussions, which I call the consequences. Those that are relying on Social Security today, the first question that I would ask them is, these 36% that have saved nothing at all, why not? Why haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Social Security, if you look at when it was created by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he said that it was not the sole income that you should rely upon when you're older. But yet, some people have become accustomed that that's what they should do, that Social Security should be enough for them to get a house and pay for their their expenses and have some money left over. And it's certainly not intended to do that. And in fact, some people will say, well, I've contributed all my life and I should, that money is mine and I should have it returned. What they don't realize is the amount of money that they're getting back in Social Security is much more than they've paid in. So if you retired in 1960, and you're married, if you retired in 1960, you got back 20 times more than you paid in. And that's important. You got back 20 times more than you paid in. If you're retiring in 2010 and you're single, if you're 2010 you retired, in Social Security, you're still getting back 20% more than you paid in. Somebody has to pay that 20%. This Social Security has become a generational issue, where the current generation and the previous generations have received more in benefits from Social Security than they paid in, and their children and grandchildren are going to get less in benefits than they're going to pay in. And I think that that's really unfortunate, that the current generation is taking more than what they paid in. It is not. It's an entitlement program that you're entitled to, of course, but you certainly aren't entitled to get more money than what you paid in. And if you are going to get more money in than you paid in, that means that somebody else is going to get less. And that is an argument that most people aren't having. They just believe that they're entitled to it, and without cause to whether they've put in enough money to actually get it out.
And once once those entitlements start, then when we talk about the budget, saving money, cutting costs, everybody looks at the other guy and says, well, we'll cut his entitlement, but don't cut mine. And so we have politicians that scared to death to do anything. Is that correct?
Well, certainly, because the way they get reelected is pick the group that votes the most.
Mm-hmm.
And since there's more lower and middle class individuals than there are rich, you see that the focus is the rich are unfair. It's unfair that they had more money. They're less concerned with the young because the young typically don't vote. So there's two groups right there. The lower and middle class is what they concentrate on, and they concentrate on older people because older people have one of the highest percentages of voting. So if you're looking to get elected, you're going to concentrate on those types of groups. The political realm, politics, which was once the most noble and decent profession, really has denigrated into decadence and incivility, where deflecting blame is more important than reflecting character.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about take it from the rich, take it from the young, take it from the businesses, take it from anybody that they can to give it to the segment of the population that votes and the segment of population that you can now say it's not your fault that you don't have any money in retirement. It's not your fault that you can't get health care. Instead, it's the fault of these predatory individuals, which is absolutely not true. It's really a sad circumstance, to be honest with you. I mean, the demographics of Social Security, more than anything else, have forced the program to be unsustainable. People forget that Social Security, they've raised taxes on Social Security 30 times since it started. It's a program that you can't control or can't be sustained at its present formula. The life expectancy, as I said, in 1935 was 62. Now it's 77. That's the average, is 77.
Mm-hmm.
The percentage of the population in 1935 over 65 was only 7%. Now it's 14% of the society. Do you know that in 1935 you had 42 people paying into Social Security, and now you have 3.2? It's an unsustainable program. The demographics are killing Social Security. And until we start making reforms to Social Security, including the current retirees, because again, current retirees' expenses are coming out of future retirees. Their children and their grandchildren are the ones that are going to have to pay via loans for what their grandparents got. And I think that here's the thing, that it's not meant to be a generational argument, but the point is the only way that current retirees can receive this money is if future retirees give it to them. And future retirees won't get the money that the current retirees are getting. So when they talk about unfairness and selfishness, I often ask, who's more selfish? The people who want the money now, with the full expectation that their children and grandchildren won't get it, or their children and grandchildren says, hey, we need to reform the system so at least I get something when I retire. It's really so much of a difficult argument. When you look at conflict, conflict is usually about the quest for resources. Our resources are diminishing. It should be no surprise to anybody. Nobody should be surprised that there is such consternation and conflict within society because our resources are diminishing.
Mm. With your book, The Choices and Consequences of Our Age, the decisions, and I've always said this, some of the things that are taking place today is because of the choices that we, individuals, local government, state and federal government people have made years ago. And now it's coming around, the bad choices have come around and bit us. And that goes for our individual lives as well, where we were always taught you got two choices, either this one or that one, but there's going to be repercussions in whichever one you choose. If you choose good, there's going to be good. If you choose bad, there's going to be a bad repercussion. But those days seem to be gone.
Well, and here's, I think, what's unique about my book. I looked at, my intent was not to blame, but to explain. And so I really didn't want to make it a Republican, a Democrat, or a rich or poor, or an old or young, or educated or not educated, or worker or not worker. I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to explain what has happened. That's why in this book there's really three components. There's the political, the economic, and the societal. At the end of the day, we do like to blame our politicians. We do like to blame corporate America. But the fault rises and falls with the individual. And one of the central points I make in my book is that the rugged individual, the person that once defined Americans, they've abdicated their responsibility to control their own destiny, and they're now utterly dependent on an employer for a job, the government for health care and retirement, and the wealthy to pay this nation's taxes. And it's created this deepening sense of insecurity and instability throughout all of our economic, political, and societal institutions. And that, in a nutshell, really is what has happened, is people can't create their own job. They can't get their own health care. They can't, in some ways, pay their taxes. 50% of the people in the United States don't pay federal income tax, which I think is a travesty. How can you live in this country and not pay at least some sense of a federal income tax? Everybody should pay something. So they've abdicated their responsibilities over the years. And the statistics are mind-boggling. There's 65 million people, which is about 50%, a little over 50% of our country, that pay virtually no taxes. 45% of all households receive some form of government assistance, whether it's Social Security or Medicare or veterans or school lunch. 45%. That's an amazing statistic. 47 million people are on food stamps. 45 million people on Social Security. I mean, that's 50 million people are on Medicare. How can you sustain a government and a society when you have those kinds of great statistics in 1980 that wages and salaries were 60% of a person's income, and today it's 51%. In 1980, government support was 11% of personal income, and today it's 18%. So we're making less of our money in personal income and getting more of our money from the government. So when you talk about, as this book does, personal responsibility, you can't blame the rich. You can't blame corporate America. You have to take some ownership and responsibility. You have to accept the consequences, which are that you've really advocated your responsibility to control your own destiny. And that, more than anything, has created the instability that so many people feel.
But it's much easier to become a victim, right?
Well, it is. There's the winners and the victims. There's the workers and the victims. It's easy to be a victim because then it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course I haven't been a success. It's because of the rich has taken more of my money. Of course I haven't been successful. It's because management has been unfair. Of course I haven't been successful because, I've been harassed. Of course I haven't been successful. Well, when you look at, and I wrote a book about the great people of our time, looking at great people, and far and away, those that have become great became great because they've overcame obstacles in their life. Some of the obstacles have been the most traumatic that you can imagine, but they've overcome those obstacles. So you really have two choices. You can become overcome by those obstacles, or you can go down swinging and try to go around, above, under, over, whatever it may be, those obstacles. And the ones that are successful, I call them in the book American Dreamers. The one that becomes an American Dreamer is the one who overcame whatever obstacle they have. And I looked at, in this book in particular, what makes somebody successful, not so much rich or wealthy, but what makes somebody successful in today's economy. And it comes down to 6 attributes. And those attributes are, first, whether it's Starbucks or Subway, they start with a great idea. Mm-hmm. It all starts, and everybody has ideas. It starts with a great idea. Then they sacrifice. They sacrifice their time, effort, money, whatever it is. They have a great idea, and then they sacrifice. And then they work hard. Those people who make it in life don't just have one job, they have 2. They may even have 3. They just don't work 10 hours a day, they work 12 or 14. And then they take a risk. So they sacrifice, and they work hard, and then they take a risk. They take a loan against their house. They take borrow money from friends and family, but they take a risk. And then they do have, the 5th and 6th is they have a little bit of luck, and they have a little bit of help. But that doesn't discount that they have this great idea, and then they sacrifice so much of their life, and then they worked hard, and they took a risk. Those are people that make it. People are surprised when they read my book, or they've heard me give a speech, that only 8% of wealth is inherited. 8%. 80% of those people who are rich today are first-generation rich. 70% of those people in Forbes 400 are self-made. 70%. That's telling us there isn't this plutocracy out there. There isn't this group of people who are rich that from generation to generation control all the wealth in the United States. It's telling us that you can become wealthy, you can become successful, and most people who are today, it's the first generation in their families who have done so. I mean, when you say 8% of wealth is inherited, that means that 92% of people have created their own wealth. There's something to be applauded for that. And yes, you can become wealthy if you're willing, I think, to follow those 6 aspects, mechanisms that I think most people who have been successful have followed.
That's a staggering statistic. That kind of makes what's the old cliche? They were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. That kind of blows that thing away, doesn't it?
Well, it's a statistic you don't hear very much of. It certainly isn't. It's really something to be applauded, frankly, that in this country that there is a process where no matter what your condition is in life, you can become successful. I mean, there's Oprah Winfrey, who was born poor. There's Venus and Serena Williams, I talked about in my book, who certainly have become multimillionaires. Bill Clinton never owned a house until after he got out of being president, and I think in a 5-year period he made something like $105 million. We can go on and on with people. Phil Knight, who owns Nike. Sam Walton, who started Walmart. The list is endless of people who really started with nothing and created this behemoth company, Facebook, with Mark Zuckerberg. He was not a multimillionaire when he started Facebook, and now he's worth billions of dollars. So there are countless examples of people who had nothing but had an idea and worked hard and sacrificed and took a risk, and they received the benefit of it. And they should be applauded for that.
So what happened to our rugged individuals?
That's a key question. Well, so much has happened. First of all, the good job has went away. The job that paid about $17 an hour in benefits has certainly went away. But when you've had these changing economies, as I've talked about what happened after World War II over the last 30 years, and changing industries, it really changed society, and not for the better. The United States has really become a society not of what we used to call these rugged individuals or independent frontiersmen, but now of dependent employees, not of those, I think, who seek a hand up, but those who seek a handout, and not of those who accept responsibility for their actions, but those that look to blame others for their own poor choices. And that's really sad. The Calvinists, as most people who realize who study history, we had a Calvinist religious background in the United States. The early settlers certainly were typical of that, and they demanded that citizens invest their time and effort into work, and then to reinvest their rewards into substantive work ventures. And over time, that philosophy did create a citizenry that had the freedom to choose their own path in life, but also to bear the consequences of those choices. And back in the day, these principles, I'm talking 200 years ago, of sacrifice and hard work and thrift and savings and individualism, they produced an economy that was centered on growth and investment, and that a government that was cognizant of its limits, and that citizens that were responsible for their own well-being and future. And it also helped create a semblance of personal security in an often insecure world. And after World War II and the rise of government, they said, well, we're going to do more for you. You don't have to worry about your retirement anymore. We're going to have Social Security. You don't have to worry about your health care because your employer is going to pay for that. You don't have to worry about if you lose your job because we're going to have unemployment. You don't have to worry as you age about health care because we're going to have Medicare. And if there's one fallacy, it is that these implied promises that were made, the government can't live up to today. But also, individuals started to say, well, I'm not going to save for my retirement. I'm not going to save and invest in my own future, meaning my own research and development. I'm going to let somebody else do it. The days are so good today, I'm talking the 50s, 60s, 70s, that I'm going to work for this company in perpetuity until I retire. And then when I retire, they're going to give me a retirement, and I'm going to have Social Security and Medicare. This is great. It's a great time to be alive. So you started to invest less in your future and depend on others to do it for you. The end result is what we see today, is 36% of the people retire with saving nothing at all. That would be virtually unheard of 100 years ago, because 100 years ago there was no Social Security, and the only way you were able to live in retirement years was either living with your family or saving enough where you can live on your own when you retire. That doesn't exist anymore. So you get used to, over time, George, not having to create your own future. You get used to somebody else creating your own future, and you become dependent on that. And when that dependency is established, that's fine as long as it's continued. But because of this often complex world that we live in, a globally competitive world, our government can't do it anymore. Our employers can't do it anymore. And so it's become unstable and insecure because what we've relied upon for 2 generations no longer comes true.
So we act, or let's say the employers, when they took jobs out of this country and went elsewhere, were actually, they were forced I mean, because of the high cost of production and the employees' costs and so on and so forth. So they really didn't have much of a choice if they was going to stay in business.
They had, I think, virtually no choice. It's not just, as I mentioned, that payroll taxes and health costs and pension costs that were 5% of compensation in late 1940s are now 30%. That's only one aspect. And you think of what makes up that 30%, it's workers' compensation, Medicare, long-term disability, short-term disability, life insurance, Social Security, vacation leave, sick leave, all of these benefits, which are great. Who doesn't want these benefits? But we've priced ourselves out of the market. It's not only that, though. It's a federal tax code that has 20,000 pages. It's 1,500 pages just in the federal crime code. It's 80,000 pages of regulations. It's expansive regulations that businesses have to hire individuals so that they can make sure that they adhere to these regulations. It's rising corporate taxes, which sap incentives to expand overseas. It's an uncontrollable court system that expands litigation, whether it's discrimination or harassment or disability or various leaves or overtime. It's become a hostile environment for businesses to operate in it. And when you think that you can take your product and go overseas and not have to worry about a city, county, state, federal government, and all the myriad of regulations and taxes, and a court system that seems to punish employers rather than enable them to create more jobs, with a tax system that says, if you're going to take a risk, we're going to take more money from you. And you sit back and you say, well, why should I take a risk and give you more money when I'm the one taking a risk? If I take a risk and I lose it all. If I take a risk and win, you get most of my risk. You get most of the consequence of the decision that I've made. Why should I do that? It's inevitable that jobs are going to go overseas because it's easier to make a living. And that's so fundamental to what has happened today. I think one of the principal changes that have to be made is we have to be more business friendly. Unfortunately, some of the politicians have laid the blame for what has happened to our economy at businesses. And they don't want to lower corporate income taxes, or they don't want to relax some of the regulations that really constrict somebody from hiring individuals. Now, I know businesses that won't hire more than 15 people because of all the additional regulations and costs that they have to pay. Mm-hmm. Will not expand past 15 people. And you think to yourself, what kind of government regulation is beneficial when you force a business not to grow? And if you don't grow, of course, not only can you not hire more people, but you don't invest in more equipment, you don't invest in bigger buildings, you don't pay more taxes as a business, you don't pay individuals salaries that then they can pay personal income tax on. So you certainly don't grow the economy. That's what's happening. So it's not just the cost of the worker, it's all these other aspects that really government has made it very difficult for a business owner to become successful.
I closed my business down in 2010. Excuse me, and I was in the construction industry. Number one, I felt that I was still healthy, somewhat still in my right mind. So I was going to jump out of the rat race while I was still able to enjoy myself. The other reason is every time you turn around, someone had their hand in your pocket. And if they didn't have your hand in your pocket, they was coming to put their hand in your pocket. Someone, be it local, state, or federal, was always just around the corner, wanting to ask you why this and why that. So, for the small business people out there is a tremendous amount of frustration, and I never realized that there were 80,000 pages of regulations. That in itself can't be good, right?
It can be, especially if you have to make sure that you follow those regulations. And most of those regulations are fee-based. Mm-hmm. So if there's not a fee to comply, there's certainly a fee if you don't comply. And some of these regulations, by the way, are good. I mean, clean water, and we don't want people dropping their hazardous waste down some well. So this is not to say that some of these are not good, but you can't say that they're all good. And if you're going to run a business and you can go to a country that doesn't have these regulations versus one that does, because all these regulations have a cost. There is a cost either in terms of time or money in ensuring that you meet these regulations, because you either have to invest the time to learn about the regulations and make sure that you're following them, or you have to hire somebody because some of the regulations are so complex that you can't understand them, or you have to hire attorneys to make sure that you can file the right papers or anything in that nature, which are expensive, or accountants to make sure that you're calculating your taxes or your income in the right categories. All of those have costs, and when you rise costs to the point that an individual is saying, it's just not worth it for me to expand my business or to open a business because of all these regulations, it can't be positive. It just can't be a positive circumstance, and that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing people who just don't want to expand their business because of these other regulations. We have heard from people regarding the healthcare, and there's a number that you have to reach on healthcare where you have to start providing healthcare for your workers. And some people are saying, we just don't want to grow that big. Mm-hmm. We're going to, just take an acceptable profit if we can and not build a bigger business because of the ancillary costs that come on. And it's really sad. It's really a sad way to go. So on one end, you have the government that says it's corporate America's fault that the economy is not growing, and you have corporate America saying, why on earth would we grow? Because you've created such a hostile environment, business environment for us, that it's just not beneficial for me. And remember, I think this is the most important part of a business. A business exists because they make more profits than they have expenses, or more income than they have expenses. Mm-hmm. And included in that calculation is the risk factor. And if you're going, as a business, if you're going to borrow money and take a risk, I'm going to open up a restaurant. I don't know if it's going to be successful. I'm going to open up a printing place. I don't know if it's going to be successful. Well, you take a risk with your money, a risk with an unknown reward. You may lose everything, but you're going to take a risk because you think that you can make it. Well, you're going to calculate how much you think you can make. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to take out a $100,000 loan, you not only want to make $100,000 back, but you want to have a profit. And how much profit is enough? 20,000, 30,000, 40,000? You have to decide how much is enough. But when you start looking at the federal, state, county, city taxes that you have to pay, in addition to sales tax, property tax, fees from local government that you have to pay on building permits, on business licenses, all of those fees, plus the fees of employees. And then you start to realize, gosh, I think I can make a $50,000. I can invest $100,000 and make $50,000, but I'm going to lose $40,000 of it in all of these various fees and taxes. Mm-hmm. So, do I want to take a loan against my house to maybe make $10,000 when I can put it in the stock market and maybe make $6,000? You know what? The risk isn't worth it to me. For $10,000 after I pay all of my fees, it's not worth the risk for me. I can make $6,000 in the stock market or $10,000 taking a loan against my house. I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just make the $6,000 rather than the $10,000, and I'm not going to invest. Well, if you don't invest, then you haven't purchased that building or leased that building. You haven't paid those taxes to the local government or the fees to the local city hall. You haven't hired anybody. Instead, you're just going to put the money in the stock market. Is it no wonder that the stock market is doing so well over the last couple of years? Mm-hmm. People don't want to feel like they want to take this investment on because the rewards for that investment are not great enough for them to take that risk.
But yet we hear the politicians, especially now during election year, of how the rich should be taxed, how everyone needs to pay their fair share, and since they're richer, they should pay more, and so on and so forth. On a out of all the countries in the world that enforce taxes on their people, how high are we up on the totem pole?
Well, most statistics will show that we're fairly we're not at the top, not low, but not at the top. I don't know the exact number, but what they don't calculate is that a number of countries, like France and England, also have medical insurance in their tax base. So their taxes, and this is what some politicians say, our taxes are lower than France, our taxes are lower than England. Well, they are, but that's because they pay in taxes for health insurance. Health insurance in the United States is 16%. 16% of our economy is health-related. So if we included that in our taxes, we would be at the top. But the point that you have to ask yourself is not so much, and this is, we can get back to taxes in a little bit because I want to talk about the fairness, but the thing about taxes that I always like to talk about is why do we spend so much time talking about taxes rather than expenses? Mm-hmm. Why is the conversation in the political realm or otherwise always about how much is paid in rather than what is done with the money once it is paid in? Education, one of my favorite subjects. As I mentioned, I have a doctorate in education. I've taught education for 20 years. We're fifth in industrialized countries in the amount of money that we pay into education, but yet we're 17th and 25th in math and science. Why are we fifth in what we put in, but what we're getting out is 17th and 25th? We've spent an amazing statistic when you look at education, and what we've spent in education is that real spending on education has tripled. This is after inflation in the last 40 years. It's tripled, but yet 70% of our eighth graders are below proficient in reading and math. 70%. Why are we spending so much in education and getting so little in return? No one starts to talk about that, and you don't hear people talk about that. We have spent in relation to infrastructure, which I think is one of the most important aspects of nearly any country. And if you look at their infrastructure, you'll see that those that have the best infrastructure, that's a solid business practice. Well, the U.S. spends only 1.6% of its GDP on infrastructure. Europe spends 5%. China spends 9 to 12%. The World Economic Forum ranked American infrastructure 24th out of 124 nations. Where are we spending our money? Do you know that we have 4 times more government employees in 2010 than we did in 1951? 4 times more employees, yet the population has only doubled in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, we've added 20% more public employees. In the last 10 years, we've added 20% more. When all these other businesses are cutting employees, we've added. So it's not so much what we spend the money on, how much money comes in, it's what we spend it on. And let's talk about the fair share. Probably my favorite argument to talk about today, because you hear that quite a bit. The rich need to pay their fair share. The top 10% in terms of income pay over 70% of the taxes, of federal income tax. The top 10% pay 7 times more in taxes. How much more should the top 10% to pay in order for it to be fair? That means that 90% of the population in the United States pays about 28% of the taxes. Is that fair? As I mentioned, 65 million people don't pay federal income tax. Is that fair? 50% of the tax-eligible population doesn't pay taxes. Is that fair? I love this fair argument because the next question I ask is, what is fair? If the top 10% are only paying 72% of the federal income tax, how much more should they pay so that it's fair? By the way, the top 10% makes about 37% of the nation's income. So they pay double in taxes than their income. It's an atrocious statistic. So it's clear that they are paying more than their fair share. The key is so many people aren't paying their fair share, aren't paying anything. And that's what's really been so much more destructive. But I also make this point, too. For those who think that the rich are not paying their fair share, certainly tax them more. Tax them as much as you want. Have them pay 100% of the federal income tax. Keep raising the taxes to the point that you think that you're getting enough, because you won't get enough. We all know that you can't tax the rich enough to get enough money to run this country.
Exactly.
But continue to raise their taxes to a level that you think is fair, and then you live with the repercussions. Because if you think somebody's going to work 14 hours a day to give most, if not all, of their money to the government, you're wrong. If you think that people are going to take a risk with their money so that nearly all the rewards go to the government, you're wrong. If you think people are going to hire additional people so that the fruits of their labor, which sometimes go to management, are going to go straight to taxes, you're wrong. And the other thing that I tell people is nearly all taxes trickle down. We talk about trickle down tax cuts. Nearly all taxes trickle down. If you're a business and the taxes rise, tax is an expense to a business. It is just like payroll. It is just like PG&E, our gas and electric, our water. It is an expense of doing business. And when a business operates, they take all their expenses and they have to have more revenues than they do expenses. And if they're paying taxes, that's included in their expenses. And no business is going to stay open if they have more expenses than they have revenues. So when you raise your taxes, which means you raise expenses, there will come a point where the business is going to say, it is not profitable for me to operate anymore. And they will close down. And the people that work for them will not have a job anymore. So businesses, the taxes are destructive. And I'm not necessarily a tax expert, but I spent years studying taxes. Taxes are beneficial when what you do with taxes allows a business to expand and improve society. So if you're going to charge a tax on an individual, on an organization, what you do with that money should advance the interests of society. Mm-hmm. And how can you say that the taxes that are charged to the American public are increasing our infrastructure, are bettering our Social Security, are making Medicare more solid, are making post office be able to deliver mail on time? As we know, they're certainly going broke. Our educational system on solid footing. We can't balance a budget. We're $1 trillion over every year. If you look at instance after instance of where the money is spent, you can see that the tax money that they're collecting is not spent wisely and is certainly not advancing the interests of this country.
You know, Dean, what you're saying, and you know it, and I know it, and there's a multitude of people that knows it. What you're saying is nothing new. I mean, it's just God-given common sense. So, why? And I've asked this question. I never get an answer. Why can it be done? I mean, it's not. We've got complicated problems, but yet the things that you're talking about are just common sense things that could be implemented without too much trouble. But why can't we, or why won't we do that?
Right. Well, I often think that our problems are simplistic. I don't think that whether you're Democrat or Republican, old versus young, whatever you may be, the problems are apparent and the solutions are well known. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we don't have the political and societal will to do it. And why don't we? Because there's a segment of the population that is benefiting from the way things are. And in a nutshell, there you have it. There's been a cadre or a group of people, a segment of society that has grown dependent and they are an advantageous they have an advantageous relationship with the way that it exists now. So and it's a solid enough voting bloc that it just will not change until I think the system collapses or near collapse. Let me give you some examples. I was just in Chicago Wednesday. The Chicago teachers' strike is really such a bellwether of what's happened nationally. They're among the highest paid teachers in the nation, and they went on strike. And they went on strike because for mainly two reasons. Two reasons is they're going to be closing some schools because there's not enough students, and the teachers didn't want the schools closed because they're going to lose jobs. Secondly, they didn't want to be evaluated, just like anybody else who has a job is evaluated. They want to be evaluated. So here are teachers whose main job is to teach individuals, and they didn't want to have their school closed even though there wasn't enough students, and they didn't want to be evaluated. And instead of them coming forward and saying, let's evaluate and get rid of the bad teachers and let's close schools that aren't productive, use that money to buy more books, whatever. They said, nope, we're going to fight you for that. We're going to go on strike. By the way, they also got a 16% increase in pay, and they're among the highest paid teachers in the nation. And what they were saying, if you go back and read or Google, any of the listeners, Google the strike, they were talking about how in some schools they don't have air conditioning. In some schools the books are old. The technology is old. And that they need to update many aspects of their school. But yet they took a 16% increase rather than saying, we're not going to take the increase, and why don't you instead rehabilitate the schools? Why not say, let's lay off some teachers that we don't need anymore and use that money to put it into the classroom? We only spend 61% of our money in the classroom. So when you ask about why can't it change, there's an absolutely perfect example of why it doesn't change. Mm-hmm. Because there's a segment of the population that profits from the way it is, and they will vote for as long as they can to keep the status quo and to keep profiting at it. Social Security, another great example. The people who are getting Social Security should come up and say, we have to cut our Social Security because if we don't, my children and grandchildren, those people who are on Social Security, will not get as much as I'm getting. It's unfair for me to take more in Social Security today because my grandkids and children will not get that level of Social Security. Mm-hmm. Are they saying that? No. Even the politicians are saying, if you have Social Security now, we won't touch it. That's unfair. Mm-hmm. Even if you retire today in Social Security, you get 20% more than you paid in. That 20% is paid for by me and my kids and everybody else's kids. That's unfair. Mm-hmm. But they won't reform it. You won't hear the AARP come out and say, reform Social Security, cut the benefits so that it lasts for the next 100 years. They won't say that. Again, there's a segment of population that benefits of it. Let's talk about Greece. Greece is a perfect example. Greece is finally falling, and they have a bloated public sector. They're even today out protesting against the government saying, don't cut any more public sector jobs. When 50% of the people work for the public sector, it's unsustainable. Exactly. France is another example. France is a perfect example of a public sector that they can't support, but they haven't cut the public sector. And instead what they've done is raise taxes on the rich. And as we know, some of the rich, which is 75%, by the way, 75%, they want to tax the rich, 75%. I don't know many people who are going to want to stay in France and pay 75% of whatever they make to the government.
No.
And in fact, if you've seen that in England, they've put out advertisements to some of the rich people in France that says, come over to England, we don't tax that much. And of course, France is quite upset about it. But there's another good example of rather than taking on the bloated public sector, in the United States, 3 of the top 10 contributors to the campaigns are public unions of public employees. By the way, I'm a public employee as well, so I'm not talking disparagingly about public employees, and I'm a private sector person, but I am a public employee, and I realize that there has to be changes there, but too many people, again, profit from the way that it is, and they refuse to change it. So until either the system collapses or people have a sense of nobility and decency and say, hey, I know I have profited, but it's not fair anymore. We need to reform the system, which means I'm going to have to take less, but it's important that we do that. We need to reform the system system-wide. When we say system, it's system-wide, to reform it and make it more responsible to the public, more beneficial if you want to create jobs, and certainly more fair. And until that happens, it's not going to work. I think that we're probably along the same lines as Greece. And Greece didn't reform itself until it fell apart. Look at what's happening in Spain. Mm-hmm. In Spain, you have one segment of the population that's trying to secede. Look at what's happening in England. Scotland is trying to secede from the United Kingdom.
It's it's like we're going to ride that horse until the horse falls.
That's exactly right. And then people are going to say, what happened? Look what's happening in Greece. What happened? It must have been the politicians. Well, let's to be fair to politicians who, aren't necessarily the most, as a lot, they're not the most ethical, what I would say that, but if you're a politician and you realize that you have to reform Social Security and Medicare, and you need to have fewer public employees, and you need to cut some of the benefits, Who is going to vote for somebody like that? So yes, it's great as a politician to get up there and say that you're going to do this, but you're virtually unelectable if you do.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the choice? You just won't get elected, but you'll make certainly the noble statements. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to admire about that. But it certainly won't get you elected.
It's like the Kool-Aid's poison, but you drink it anyhow.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And what needs to happen is you have to have both political parties, both political entities, rather than saying, this is a guy who's going to cut Social Security, vote for me. You need both of them to say, vote for either one of us, but we both have to reform Social Security. We both have to reform education, which means we have to take on the teachers' unions. We both have to reform the legal system, which means we're going to take on the very powerful lawyer association. It means that we're going to have to reform the public sector, which means we're going to take on the very powerful public sector entities. And until there's some consensus that I'm not going to pay a political price if we do this, then it's just disadvantageous for one group to say we're going to do it because the other one will say that we're not going to do it. And the voting public, has shown a desire to not necessarily vote for the better future, but to vote for what's better for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's terribly distressing.
Everything you just said points to the title of your book. I mean, it's just amazing. There is so much. I could sit and talk to you about this all night long. Eventually, you'd probably kick me away, but
I do appreciate. I didn't get a chance to tell you, but I do appreciate you having me on your show, and I hope it's an interesting topic for you and your listeners. I mean, it's certainly interesting to me, and I do appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's very interesting, and it's our privilege to have you, Dean, because we need to be informed.
Yep.
And in this day and age, with all of our technology, there's no reason for somebody to be dumbed down here in America. We should be sharp as tacks in every nook and cranny of this country, with so much information available to us. And if we just stop long enough and listen to some good old God-given common sense, of course, you just laid it all out there for us, and I don't know whether to when we go off the air tonight, I don't know whether to cry or be happy, or I'm not so sure what my emotions are going to be when you really sit down to it. I guess to sum it all up, Dean, to me, and this is just me, it's scary.
It is. It is.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, next month, next year. But we can see the train coming, and we better get off the track. But apparently, we're not going to do that. We're going to get run over with it. And I would say that if we don't get off, if we don't do what you said we should do, this United States of America will no longer look like the United States of America that I grew up in and you grew up in. There's some drastic changes that are going to come whether we want them or not. And I just pray that we're that rugged individuality falls down over us sometime real soon.
You bet. Absolutely well said, George.
I thank you very, very much, Dean.
Thank you.
I wish you the best of luck, and we can buy your book at Amazon.
You betcha. I look forward to that.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank him. We thank him from the bottom of our heart. Keep shouting out, Dean. Keep shouting out.
I definitely will, George.
All righty, sir. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Any way you look at it, it seems that we can't put the brakes on. No one has the gumption to stand on the brakes and stop this madness, because that's what it is. To many, the sun might be shining today, the birds singing, the grass is growing. But there's coming a day for all of us that the sun's not going to be as bright, the grass isn't going to grow as high, and the birds may or may not continue to sing. But those days are coming. We always said when the gang would be around, Ray Charles could see that, and that is not a derogatory statement to any blind people by any means. But anyhow, we can all see it coming. We know it. We know it. The common sense factor. We've all been given common sense. We might not use it, but we've all been given a measure of it anyhow. Common sense tells us that you just can't sustain a society as we are, and it can't continue. Something's going to break. You put enough weight on something, I don't care what it is, you put enough weight on something and it's going to snap, it's going to break. That is our system today. It's going to break. And when it breaks, oh my goodness, I can't even begin to imagine the heartache, the pain, the stress, the craziness that will take place across this nation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are only, 17 or 18 days away from walking into that voting booth. Do what I've asked you to do so many times in our blog, on the radio. Please, forget that you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, or whatever you have above your head. Dig into the facts. Use that God-given common sense that you have. And when you walk into that voting booth on the 6th of November, you can walk back out knowing that you were informed, that you went by the facts, not by fables or not by things that other people told you, but that you dug down deep and you looked at the facts for yourself. And when you push that button or pull that lever, you can walk out feeling assured that you did your part to get this country back to its greatness. Oh, my goodness gracious sakes alive. Thank you, Dean. Thank you so very, very, very much. We need that. We are going to have, we're going to take a break here, and I need to catch my breath. I need to get a drink of water, because that frog that I've been chasing, or the frog that's been chasing me for the last 3 weeks, is insisting that he wants to do battle tonight. So while I get myself together, let's everybody out on the dance floor. You know, this is Friday night. Sometimes it gets freaky around here. So you just go ahead and do what you want to do. Don't go away. Stay with us. We've got more just ahead.
just a little line. Oh, it's in that room. Come on. With a hoe.
I'm sure that set your feet a tapping and your fingers snapping and your head was bobbing and your booty was shaking. If it wasn't, I just don't know what to tell you. While I'm waiting for this, I did battle with the frog, the frog that's been bothering me, and I'm trying to talk and do this at the same time, so just bear with me. The amazing thing of radio. I'm telling you what. Anyhow, I did battle with the frog, and I put him off. We'll just say I put him off. He's off to the side. That doesn't mean he's not going to come back, so I got to keep my eye on him. Charlie, you keep your eye on him. Many, many thanks to my friend Charlie. It seems like Charlie has been so neglected lately, but listen, this show would not be possible if I didn't have Charlie the Wiener. That's it. That's right. His name, Charlie the Wiener. It would not be possible. Charlie the Wiener is a real live wiener dog. Trust me. I'm not telling tales out of school. He is a real live wiener dog. He is my co-host, and he operates the soundboard, and he is the announcer. He's the guy that you hear when we come on the air at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Monday through Friday. That's Charlie's voice. And he is really, really something. So, Charlie, thank you, my friend. And he is a real live wiener dog. He walks upright here at the Funny Farm. Of course, when we go out into the real world, then he gets down on all fours like a dog's supposed to do. And and he talks. He has a voice. You hear him every night. He's done some episodes, so on and so forth. So everyone here at the Funny Farm has a voice. Miss Ernestine, Harvey, Charlie, everybody. If you're here at the Funny Farm, regardless of what you are, human or otherwise, you have a voice. And we are just so delighted. We have a lot of talent right here on the Funny Farm. We've had a fantastic week. Oh, guests that had us sitting on the edge of our chairs, guests that made us laugh, and most of all, guests that made us think. Look back. Monday night we had Mr. Bill Dean, an investigative journalist who's been in the business for well over 30 years. And he wrote a book based on a true story of an individual that he was involved with by the name of, and they called him the Smooth Criminal. And he wrote that book, and he shared with us what that book was about on Monday night. He had me sitting on the edge of my chair. Tuesday night we had Jackie Grissom, and I can remember I don't have it written down in front of me. Jackie and his partner, and they shared with us some of the prophetic things that they feel is going to take place. Wednesday we had Vassie from Los Angeles, a talented young lady who can sing and dance and put together choreographs, and she does commercials for some of the top name brands across this country and around the world. Last night we had Mr. Paul Green. My, if you didn't hear last night's show, please go to my page here on Spreaker.com and listen to Mr. Paul Green as he gave us a play-by-play account of that terrifying day, March 9th, 1977, in Washington, D.C. He was one of the hostages that was taken. He, along with many, many others, were injured. Many were beaten. Some were stabbed. Some were shot. One was killed. So he was with us last night, and he took us through the whole ordeal. And he has recently written a book this year. He has recently written a book commemorating the 35th anniversary of the first terrorist attack in Washington, D.C. Now, you have to remember, if you live back in the 60s and the 70s, particularly in the 70s, the big deal with the terrorists then was hijacking airplanes. And they would hijack an airplane flying somewhere to somewhere else, redirect it, put it on the ground, fuel it up, offer demand. Sometimes they killed folks, and they would fly off into another country, so on and so forth, and all that stuff. This was the first time that a terrorist attack actually moved in amongst the people in Washington, D.C., took over 3 buildings, and well, you listen to the story of Mr. Paul Green. He wrote the book, Forgotten Hostages. It'll put you on the edge of your seat, and you'll stay there for the entire show. I promise you. And tonight, a man that's got some God-given common sense and has some direction, or has a sense of direction that this country needs to go in. Mr. Dean Gualco. He's written 5 books. And one of them, The Choice and the Consequences, or the Consequences of Our Choices. Thank God for people like him. And listen to tonight's show. Tell someone else. If you didn't get to listen to it tonight live, tell someone else. Get in there, listen to it, because it's good news, it's appropriate news, and we are only 17, 18 days away from election. And it's information that we all need, and we need to think about. Next week, Dr. Kathy Groover will be with us Monday night. Dr. Alex Hills, plural. Dr. Alex Hills will be with us Tuesday night. Dr. Alex Hills is one of the men, and we use it every day, everywhere. He is one of the men, one of the individuals that created Wi-Fi. It'll be an interesting journey. Wednesday night, Patrick, and I'm not saying this last name right, I know I'm not, but I'll do the best I can. Patrick Thibault, who was an Army medic in several campaigns, he's going to be with us on Wednesday night. And Patrick, if you're listening tonight, I'll tell you tonight, and I'll tell you when you come here next week on Wednesday night. Thank you for your service, my friend, because it's men and women like you that keeps this country free. Next Thursday night, we'll have Bob Wilkie. He is a former NHL professional hockey player. He'll be with us, and he'll be sharing with us a passionate work that he's involved in. And then next Friday, we'll have none other, and I chuckle because the last time this man was here on the Funny Farm, he just went ballistic. We'll have Mr. Neil Haley out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with us next Friday, and he's better known as the Total Tutor, and he has the Total Tutor Network. He's syndicated on over 80 stations across this nation and around the world, and I enjoyed it so much because, you know, we like people just to come on the Funny Farm, be themselves, let their hair down, shake that stiffness out, stomp it out, however you got to get it out. We like people to come on here and just express themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what it's all about. Somebody to just express themselves. And that's what we're going to do right now. Get up, shake, loosen up. Let your hair down, if you have any. Let your hair down. Mom, grab Dad. Dad, grab Mom. Boys, girls, men, women, friends, Romans, countrymen, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, just stop. It's Friday night. Stop. You're listening to the George Espinlove Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Just stop. And I mean, let's really shake the ground and let's rock this place until the windows fall out. What do you think? Come on, if you know how to jitterbug, get out there. I bet a lot of you don't know how to do it. Us old timers, we can show you. Hey, let me break in here for a second. Listen to me. Listen to me. They brought my magic mirror over here. Travis brought my magic mirror over here while everybody was out dancing and tapping their foot, snapping their fingers, bobbing their head, and shaking their booty. So I got to looking, my magic mirror. I got to looking out into the real world where you're at. Now listen, you can't fake everybody out. Just because you're out there in the real world doesn't mean that you're not abnormally normal like me, regardless of the fact. I was looking in the mirror. And here's what I saw. I saw Jim and Tidy. I saw Jim and Tidy up there in Pennsylvania. And the music was playing. And I saw Jim get a hold of Tidy's hand and say, "Come on." And Tidy said, "Nah, we shouldn't do that." Now, listen, I saw you. I saw you. So I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself, okay? All right. Then I looked again, and I saw somebody. I saw somebody way out yonder. And they wanted to. They was all by themselves. I won't mention no name, Brenda Alicastro. Way out there in western Pennsylvania. Up there in them there hills. Up there in them there mountains. I won't mention your name, Brenda Alicastro, but I saw you. I know you got a bad leg. I know it hurts. And I know how much pain that you're feeling right now. But listen, I saw you. You wanted to get up. You wanted to get up and shake it. So I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself, too. Who else did I see? Let me look. Oh, let me see. Oh, yeah. I see Mike Wilson. Way out there in western, southwest Pennsylvania. Way out there. I saw that big boy. He started, and then somebody glanced at him, and he kind of stopped. All right, Mikey, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself. And everybody else, if you wasn't moving the first time, we're going to give you a chance to move the next time. Everybody here at the Funny Farm, inside the radio studio, outside the radio studio, everybody is rocking, shaking, jumping, and they're all a bunch of flakes anyhow. So we're going to give you a chance to do this all over again. Grab somebody if nobody's around. Shake it all by yourself. Just go nuts. Hey, listen to me. Some of the music that's being played again tonight is from Mevio's Music Alley. Check it out. Music.mevio, M-E-V-I-O.com. Check it out. Music.mevio.com. Thank you, guys. Come on.
Well, started off as nothing, but aimed it in a fight. You were busy screaming, and I was laughing. You were right. Then there we both decided, let we go a separate way. Well, there was nothing left between us. There was nothing left to say. Well, I went down to the bar room to get myself a drink. They put my plate a drink. Well, I wasn't half the thing. But I was thinking just you and me. I said the one way I was ready, ready for what came to be. Well, since my father met her, Irene wasn't there. But I was so full of fear it could have been a leg. Well, I can't remember as she walked me out that door. I was thinking, what the heck? Nothing happens anymore. Got back to your motel room and ended in a bed. Wasn't even listening to a single word she said. I tried to kiss her, but I could only see your name. Said, sorry girl, I'm too blind. I don't want to play this game. Oh yeah, let's boogie. When I got a cab to your place, I paid the man a fare. I could see that I don't feel so happy you were there. My heart had started pounding, and I went running up those stairs. Well, I believe you got again. Yeah, I started seeing prayer. Well, that necklace she bought you, you know the one I read, was lying crumpled on the floor in a stranger in your bed. Through the tears I heard you say that you'd see me in that bar. Well, there was no fun in telling you that I hadn't gone far. I was tempted. I was tempted.
All right. Hey, did I ever tell you I love the blues and blues rock and all that good stuff? Did I ever tell you that? Goodness gracious sakes alive. Hey, listen, I want to say thank you to Moose and Gemini for stopping in. If you want to hear a good show, go to the Moose and Gemini Cricket. Moose and Gemini. That's Gemini with a G. Moose and Gemini Cricket Show right here on Spreaker.com. Go ahead. I challenge you. Go to the Moose and Jiminy Cricket Show. You'll have a good time. And I thank him for stopping in and saying hello. Thank you, my friends. Where was I? I want to tell you, and then we're going to, since we got you all loosened up and out there on the floor, maybe some of you are literally on the floor, upside down or something. But anyhow, I hope not. My mom is doing wonderful. Wonderful. She's getting her strength back, her energy back. In fact, she gave me a beating this morning, and that was one of the first real good beatings she's given me in a long, long time. And I'm telling you what, thank you, my mom. Thank you. I really needed that beating. You know what I'm saying, huh? Yeah. That is one of the... My mom's not with us tonight in the studio. Well, I'm sure she's listening wherever she's at. She never misses a show. Yeah. Anyhow, that was one of the best beatings I've had in a long time. I rather enjoyed that beating. But my mom was doing well. It's good to breathe again. It's good to be happy again. It's good to not have to worry again. And thank you for your prayers, your kind words, your support, because without the prayers from people around this world, literally from around this world, this wouldn't have been possible. And I thank you so much, and I know my mom does too. We're going to have her back on the show as soon as she gets, she's getting busier than a one-armed paper hanger, she is. And, she's feeling good when she's busy, and when she can give me a good old thumping, you know that she's getting better. My good friend, Rick Fowler, the Rick Fowler Band from down in Athens, Georgia. We wouldn't have a Friday night if we didn't play something by Rick.
the sidewalk thinking what I'm gonna say. When I see you bouncing toward me in your semi-lingerie, you seem to look right past me no matter what I do. But I tell you I am royalty, I'm the prince of fools. And they call me the prince of fools. Baby, I ain't your prince, I'm the prince of fools. Yeah, and they call me the prince of fools. Baby, I ain't your prince, I'm the prince of fools. I'm the prince of fools.
Wow. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, Isaac thanks everybody, too. Hey, we have had one heck of a good show tonight. I want to say thank you to Dean Gualco. I don't know if I'm saying that last name or not, Dean, right or not, Dean, but forgive me if I'm not. Tremendous information that he gave us tonight, and we all need to heed what he told us. To all the people at music.melvio.com, that's music.mevio, MEVIO.com, Music Alley. To all our fine friends there, thank you, because they're the ones that's providing a lot of our music here on the show for us. Who am I forgetting? Oh, by the way, GJ is sitting at his desk somewhere out there, and I'm so glad that he is still sitting up. And I wish you all the best, my friend. And GJ will be with us one night next week, along with our other guys. Who said we can't have 2 or 3 or however? I mean, you know what I'm saying? We're just having a good time. We had a tremendous show tonight, and thanks to everyone. Thanks to all our guests that came to be with us, that took the time out of a very busy schedule and came to be with us and shared a lot of great, thrilling, mind-provoking, thought-provoking information this week that will enable us to think about it all weekend. Thank you, all the fine guests that we had. And listen, when they say thank you to us for having them on the show, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. I mean that. It's a privilege to have them on the show, because they're the ones that's bringing it to the people. We're just a vehicle. They're jumping in the vehicle and they're bringing it to the people. And we've got lots more where that came from. Hey, listen, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, there's a whole lot of love coming to you from the Funny Farm. We close out every night like this. And you might think we're just as goofy as the day is long. You'd be absolutely right. You would be absolutely right. But seriously, we do care. We care about people. I want you to email me, George C.E. at Comcast.net. George C.E. at Comcast.net. Visit the blog, theespenblog.com. We've got Skype availability, and we didn't use it last night. We didn't use it tonight. We're going to get into it here sometime along the way. From Charlie, Miss Ernestine, Harvey, my mom, Gertrude Duflicky, from Wilbur the Window Licker, Travis. Oh, I'm going to miss somebody. But from me and all of us here at the Funny Farm, if it's nighttime where you are, have a good night. If it's already tomorrow where you're at, have a good day. Until Monday, and you never know, we might slip in on a Saturday or Sunday with a special. We just don't even know ourselves. But until Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here, live from the Funny Farm with all these goofy things and people around here. This is George Espinob saying good night, and God bless you.